Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of our /ProRevenge, where many of you stop by for your daily dose of satisfaction. In this episode, you'll hear about two horrible teachers losing their jobs. The first story is about a teacher being catfished and losing everything. The second story is about how one teacher had to be sacrificed for the greater good of students. I hope you stay for these stories today and subscribe for future videos. Story 1. I catfished one of my high school teachers because he was bullying me. Some background: he knew my dad because my dad was a lawyer and had represented his ex-wife several years before in a super bitter divorce. For some reason he took out that frustration on me. He would make fun of me and bully me in front of the class. If I raised my hand to answer a question, he would roll his eyes before calling on me and loudly say to the class, "Listen to what Opie says. That way, you'll know what the wrong answers are." He would criticize my work, make comments about how I'll never amount to much because obviously I have a learning disability, which I don't. He was just being a prick. I would often get graded for penmanship, but after asking some classmates, apparently I was the only one being graded on that. I began to have anxiety about going to that class. I would dread it all day. My friends would even mention casually, "Yeah, Mr. Smith really doesn't like you, Opie. What did you do to him?" My dad was pissed that he was obviously being biased toward me for something I had nothing to do with. My dad made noise and tried to get me moved into another class, but the district and school were over capacity as it was. I couldn't move classes without displacing another student, and the school didn't think that would be fair to the other students. Clearly, they didn't give two shits about me. Now, my dad had never discussed details of his cases, but I'd overheard him angrily telling my mom after the meeting with the principal that he doesn't like that I'm in that pedo's class. And an idea was planted in my head and started to grow. I devised a plan. I gathered social media pictures of a girl who was underage and made some profiles on Kik and WhatsApp using a Google Voice number from the city. I changed her name for obvious reasons. Once I had him hooked on the made-up 17-year-old girl, I emailed all the chat logs and pictures he sent to her to the school principal and the school district main office, using every email address I could find on the school district website and social media pages. Within 3 days of the emails being sent, we had a sub. All we were told was that Mr. Smith had to take some time off due to personal issues. I still don't know what happened to him after that. I graduated about 3 months after he was put on leave and never heard from him or saw him again. I joined the military and left town about 6 months after this all happened and have not returned to the city since. One of my friends who still lives there told me a while back that he saw him working at the deli counter at the grocery store not far from where the high school was. I never told a single soul, and nobody knows it was me. The rumor mill went wild about him being a creepy pedo, but nobody knew I had anything to do with it, even though I had benefited the most from his departure. I imagine they tracked the girl down and asked her, but she obviously didn't know him. However, the chat logs from WhatsApp showed the girl telling him that she was 17 about 3 days before he sent the first of many pictures of his junk, so that was probably enough to at least get him fired and lose his teaching certification. I don't regret it, but I would never go so far on anyone again. I was a bitter, moody teen, but when you're being bullied by someone who has authority over you, you have to do what you have to do to survive. All I can say is, yikes. Catfishing a teacher, exposing him as a creep, and costing him his teaching degree. His life is practically ruined when friends, family, and colleagues find out. I'd say this is pretty much nuclear revenge in my book. Story 2. I made my high school chemistry teacher lose his job. I went to a ghetto high school in a poor community, but my parents raised me to work my ass off so I could get out of there. My parents never went to college, but because of this, my siblings and I have all gone to good schools out of state. I maintained a 4.0 GPA until the year in question in high school, taking 5 advanced courses a year. So, in one of my upperclassmen years, I signed up for an advanced chemistry course. I knew it would be hard, but I assumed, like the rest of my courses, that if the class was minimally structured and Google came in per usual, I would be fine. Other students warned me not to take the course, but since I wanted to go to college for chemistry, I knew I had to go through with it. The teacher was horrible. He was old, which was fine, and didn't offer after-class support, which is normal, but he also didn't offer in-class support. His answer to even basic questions was, "You should understand that. Talk to me about it later," but later never came. He didn't offer lunch hours, didn't offer after-school hours, and in class would just put up the answers, which were already available online and in the back of the book. When the first test came back, I had a D- with no notes to even understand what I'd done wrong. When I went to speak with him about it right after class ended, he simply told me to look more closely at the textbook for help, and that he didn't have time for me. He was 2 weeks behind on the explanations that he did give because he was constantly distracted. All of this is bad, but he didn't deserve being fired yet. What did was when he got dangerous. In an experiment with hydrochloric acid, a plug held the concentrated stuff in a tube with some magnesium and reacted to form hydrogen bubbles. Well, one of the other students in my group didn't plug the thing properly, and the plug fell out, so I asked him how to get the tube back, expecting him to tell us to discard the hydrochloric acid solution, rinse with water, and start over. I'd read the safety section in my textbook, which had this approach to working with acids. His response? He insisted that I stick my ungloved hand into the solution, grab the plug, and, still in the solution, plug it back in. He wouldn't even put his own hand in to do it. My high school self thought that this was inherently a bad idea. I took some more magnesium from the workbench and kept adding it to the solution until it stopped reacting, eating up all the hydrochloric acid to leave water. It kept getting worse. One day, he brought what he claimed were illegal fireworks into the classroom and started setting them off. He thought it was funny to point them at us wearing no safety equipment or goggles and hoodies that could have easily caught fire. He frequently would leave the room while a group of high school kids were playing with Bunsen burners and caustic chemicals. So, in combination with the total lack of education I was getting, I didn't feel safe. The last contextual thing, my high school teachers' union had negotiated for tenure. After coming to college, I've learned that this is very unusual, and in retrospect, it's an idiotic thing. This chemistry teacher was tenured, which meant that there was basically no way to fire him. He was still teaching because he refused to retire, and he had a son going through college that he needed to pay for. But at a certain point, he was affecting my chances of getting into college. I wasn't about to let one man's issues affect the prospects for the rest of my life. So, I looked up recording laws for my state and found that it was a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record my teacher with audio as long as the campus didn't say anything against it, and I was one of the parties consenting. So, for a month, with my grade tanking despite hours of studying and 3 study books on the course, I recorded him. I recorded his fireworks, his crying in the back chemical storage room, and him leaving us unsupervised. Then I made a throwaway Gmail account and a throwaway Dropbox account. I uploaded everything and emailed it to my superintendent with the ultimatum that if something wasn't done, I would email the recording to the local news and that I really didn't want to do that. Within a day, I heard back with her assuring me that I wouldn't be punished for ratting him out. My parents, her, and I met. We went over my grades, my unmarked tests, my homework, and the videos. They asked me to first talk over my concerns with the teacher, and I said I was uncomfortable with that, given his treatment of female students. The superintendent said that she wouldn't tell the teacher who had submitted the evidence, but that they needed to speak with him about the concerns to hear his side of the story. My parents and I said that was completely reasonable as long as my name was never mentioned. The next day, the teacher said he needed to speak with me after class alone. I told him I couldn't as I had another course after that, and he said that it was important. I turned my phone's recorder on again right before the class ended, and as I was packing up, he approached me. Due to the shape of the classroom, I was literally backed into a corner and would have had to push this man to the side to get out. He then started saying that one of the students in the course had brought unfounded concerns and lies to the administration about what was going on in his course, and that he knew that we hadn't always gotten along well, but he had hoped that I wouldn't have done that to him. I lied through my teeth and said that I didn't know what he was talking about, and that he was making me uncomfortable by blocking my access to the door, and that I was late for my next class. He didn't even deny what I was saying, just said that since I clearly had a problem with him, he'd be willing to stay after class to help me specifically, and that it seemed like I was struggling so much. I emailed the superintendent that recording during my next course and CC'd my parents. My parents were furious. Since the district couldn't fire him, he was put on immediate permanent medical leave. The superintendent also wrote me a thank you college recommendation letter, partially to keep me quiet, and partially because they'd been trying to get rid of this guy for years. Hey, sometimes you have to sacrifice one person for the greater good of others. He didn't really seem like he wanted to teach at all and was just showing up for a paycheck since he had tenure. Also, the hydrochloric acid thing was pretty messed up. Also, the fireworks thing. Why the hell would he shoot fireworks in a classroom? I hope this story's real. To the next story. Story 3, Don't TP My Parents' House. This took place over a decade ago, but after discovering this gem of a subreddit, I needed to share. Growing up, my friends were all about TPing houses. This involves throwing toilet paper over the house, bushes, trees, and so forth. Although we thought this was fun, even at the age of 16, we knew there were limitations on how often you should do this. Even though the joke is on the friend, the parents are the ones dealing with the mess. So, we had a rule. One person can get TP'd once a summer, no exceptions. If you were caught, you were required to help pick it up. That being said, one friend didn't respect the rule. For one entire summer, my parents' house was TP'd literally every weekend without fail. I didn't know who was doing it or who to trust until I came home late one night to see my buddy's brother, we'll call him BB, driving off in his car and flipping me the bird. After calling him out on it, he openly and happily admitted that he was the culprit of the summer's mystery TPing. BB didn't like me, and I didn't like him. He had one thing he loved more than anything. His obsession was his red 1998 Ford SVT Cobra Mustang. This car was his baby and his obsession. If he wasn't busy ruining someone's existence, he was in the garage spending his parents' money on the car. When he admitted to pounding my house with TP, he was happy to announce that he was doing it to my best friend's house too. We'll call him BFF. BFF and I ended up telling our parents about it. When my dad found out, he handed me his Costco card, and BFF's dad handed him a $100 bill and said, "Do what needs to be done." So, we bought 10 pounds of flour, 2 Costco-sized bags of toilet paper, and a thing called catfish sewer bait, the most rancid-smelling substance in the world. 100% honest, I'd rather eat a spoonful of garbage than eat a spoonful of that. One afternoon, I ended up going to BB's house to hang with his brother. Once I was alone, I snagged a pair of keys to his brother's car since they hung them on the inside of the door. We snuck back to his house that night, and here's what we did. At least 4 pounds of flour was poured into the air vents of his car. The sewer bait was dumped all over the seats and also poured into the air vents of his car. The smell was enough to make my buddy puke. We TP'd the heck out of his house. I mean everywhere. The house, the back garage, the pond out front, the trees surrounding their house, and the trees in the yard. That night, it rained, and the toilet paper became pasted. As for the car, my buddy told me that his brother sold it after bringing it to the dealership multiple times to get it fixed. He sold the car for half of its worth and was forced to drive his grandma's Buick. Story 4. Immigration lady wanted to swindle my boyfriend. In 2013, my boyfriend moved to the Philippines to study nursing. He ended up going to the university in my province. We met, became friends, and started dating. By 2015, I was a recent graduate, but he failed one course, which prompted him to move back to the US. It was heartbreaking, but we knew it was for the best. His mom had booked a ticket for him 3 months prior to his birthday for a cheaper flight. The day rolled in, and I told him to contact me if he got into any sort of trouble. We said our goodbyes and kissed one last time because we wouldn't be able to see each other in person for a really long time. 2 hours passed, and I saw his text saying that he was in a pickle. I called him and asked what was wrong. He explained to me that the lady at immigration, whom we'll refer to as Lady, wouldn't give him back his papers because he overstayed. I asked if she took all of his documents, and he responded that she did, his passport, school documents, and so forth. I asked him what she wanted and how they'd resolve this, and my blood boiled when I heard, "She wants me to pay a fee of 5,000 Philippine pesos if I want my papers back, or face jail time." 5,000 Philippine pesos was $100 at the time. Lady wanted to swindle my boyfriend. This was very common in these countries, and my boyfriend had to be the poor victim in her scheme. I was stressing out because his flight was in 3 hours and she was making things extremely difficult. One fun fact about my boyfriend is that his dad used to work for that airport. He worked there for a long time and is really good friends with some of the staff. I called his mom and told her what happened. Of course, she was as livid as I was and told her husband about her son's predicament. His dad called one of the aforementioned staff buddies and requested assistance for my boyfriend. While this transpired, the lady was still trying to persuade my boyfriend to pay the fine rather than face jail time. My boyfriend already knew about our plans to help him, so he refused and said he was fine. A few minutes later, the head of the immigration office came out and instructed her to bring my boyfriend to their office. She was surprised but complied. The lady looked smug, probably thinking that my boyfriend was some sort of criminal and she'd won the jackpot or something. Suddenly, the door opened, and a stream of managers, supervisors, and the heads of different departments in the airport entered the room. They greeted my boyfriend warmly, remarked on how grown-up he was, and asked if he remembered them. The head honcho of immigration, aka Lady's boss, entered the room and told a story about how he would babysit my boyfriend when he was a little boy. At this point, you can imagine her freaking out. My boyfriend missed his original flight but was able to take back his papers and documents and fly out the same day. A week passed, and his dad told me that lady was fired immediately for extortion. She is no longer eligible to apply for any government jobs. Story 5. We'll never see each other again? Think again. I was bullied relentlessly from the 3rd to 7th grade by multiple people in my class or upper grades. After I graduated 8th grade, I received a Facebook message from Andy, a boy who'd been bullying and harassing me from the very beginning of it all. I would post the exact message, but it was extremely vulgar and long. He ended it by saying that since we would never see each other again, he could put it all out in the open about how much of an idiotic, ugly loser I was. Of course, he used a more colorful dictionary with those words, but you get the idea. However, there was one problem. My parents owned a large wood chipper, and Andy's father owned a tree-cutting business and would often rent it from them for much larger jobs. During the summer, I noticed him walk in and start talking to my uncle, and I realized the golden opportunity had been given. I loaded Facebook on my laptop and brought the message up. I then approached his dad and said, "Your son sent this message to me a few days after graduating, and I think it's really important you read it." He raised an eyebrow at first but looked at my laptop. As he read, I could visibly see his face turn blood red, and his hands shook as he gripped the sides of my laptop harder and harder. I think he had to reread the entire thing over again just to make sure what he was reading, and even clicked the profile to make sure it had indeed been his son who sent it. Finally, he gave my computer back and told me he was so sorry for his son's behavior and language, and that he would most certainly be dealing with Andy the moment he got home. It took 2 months for me to hear about the fallout. His older and much nicer brother was friends with my sister, who told her, and then she told me. Andy was grounded for an entire summer, fall, and winter break. His parents excluded him from their annual summer camping trip, held him back from getting his driver's license for a full year, took away all his games and computer, and instead of going with his dad and brother on their hunting trips, he would be sent to their grandparents' house to help clean. I ruined his life for a good 2 to 3 years and destroyed the relationship he had with his father and mother. Probably not forever, but they certainly no longer saw him as their well-behaved youngest child. It was so satisfying. Story 6. Wanna cheat on me? Fine. I'll play musical chairs forever. This is about my former boss at a pretty big grocery chain. So Dave was a pretty average guy, 40-some years old, graduated high school, married his high school sweetheart, got a stalker job at the grocery store, and worked his way up to store manager. I worked at his store for 8 months, and he was a great boss. Everything got weird in month 9 when he was suddenly fired, and the very next month he came back as a produce manager. Then the produce manager, Bob, suddenly became the store manager. I was talking with Dave one night and asked him what was going on. So he told me. It turns out Dave's high school sweetheart wasn't so sweet. She married him because he was a 6'7" star of the basketball team, and she thought he was going to play in the NBA. When he chose a small, quiet town life instead, she never forgave him for it, nor did her well-to-do parents. She even cheated on him with guys who worked beneath him in the stores he managed. He told me he had to change stores 5 or 6 times over the years, but had stayed with her for the kids. She threatened to take them away, and he didn't want them to suffer or for him to be known as another deadbeat guy to everyone in the community. So he played the long game. He was a good father to the kids. When his wife's parents died, he used the big inheritance to pay for all 3 of the kids to go to really good private schools and top-tier colleges, with the rest set up in a trust. He lived frugally and got an accountant to manage his savings. At the youngest kid's high school graduation, he served his wife divorce papers and walked away. She can't get alimony because he needs to be gainfully employed for 12 consecutive months before they can take anything. So, every 10 to 11 months he gets fired and rehired at a different position with the same pay. The inheritance is gone because he spent it all on the kids, and his savings are in an offshore account, so she can't touch it. She got the house but has never worked in her entire life. Her looks have faded, and she has no money in the bank. Last he heard, she had to sell the house to move in with her sister. I went into the store when I was back home, and Dave was still there and still getting fired. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories in this episode. If you enjoyed it and aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. I'll see you guys in the next one.